They'd pulled away, seemingly out of nowhere. One day they were close, connected, even loving, and the next they felt cold, distant, like a stranger. You're left spinning, trying to understand how someone who once held you like they'd never let go can now look at you like you're too much. You ask yourself the question no one wants to say out loud. Did they fall out of love with me? I'm Jim Rohn, and in today's video, we're unpacking something that's misunderstood far too often. Avoidants don't fall out of love the way most people think. In fact, the emotional withdrawal you're seeing, it may not be because they stopped loving you, but because they started to. If you've ever been in a relationship with someone who has an avoidant attachment style, you know the pattern. Things get close, emotionally real, intimate, and that's exactly when they begin to pull away. But what if I told you their distance isn't always about disinterest or even incompatibility? What if it's about fear? Deep, unconscious fear triggered by the very thing they crave, love. In this video, we're going to explore why avoidant people often retreat not when things are going wrong, but when things are finally going right. We'll talk about what's really happening inside their nervous system, why love can feel dangerous instead of safe, and how their retreat is often a trauma response, not a lack of care. So if you've ever been ghosted by someone you thought you had something real with, or if you're still stuck trying to understand why they pulled away just when you started to feel close, you're not alone, and you're not crazy. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, tap the bell, and stick around. We're going to break this down with compassion, clarity, and truth, because once you understand the why, you stop blaming yourself and start healing for real. Let's dive in. Here's the truth that might reframe everything for you. Avoidants don't leave because they've stopped loving you. They often leave because they've started to. I know that can sound confusing, even frustrating, but for someone with an avoidant attachment style, the experience of love doesn't always register as safety. It can actually trigger their deepest emotional defenses, especially if the connection is real, emotionally available, and nurturing. To understand why this happens, we need to go back to where these patterns start. Most avoidants didn't grow up in emotionally safe environments. Maybe they had a parent who was physically present but emotionally unavailable. Or maybe they were taught, either directly or through experience, that needing someone made them weak, or that showing emotion led to rejection or shame. Over time, they internalized a quiet but powerful set of beliefs. Don't get too close. Don't show too much. You're safest when you're in control. This wiring helped them survive emotionally. But in adulthood, it becomes the very thing that sabotages connection. So when someone comes into their life and offers real emotional safety, consistency, affection, and availability, it feels both comforting and threatening. On the surface, they may crave that closeness, but deep down, their nervous system is still scanning for danger. Love to them represents vulnerability, dependence, emotional exposure, and even though their heart may be leaning in, their body starts to pull away. That's not logic, it's a trauma reflex. I once worked with a woman named Camila who had been dating a man with an avoidant style. For months, things were wonderful. He was engaged, sweet, responsive, but once she started opening up about her feelings, once things got serious, he grew distant. No big fight, no clear reason. Just silence, hesitation, and eventually a breakup. She was devastated. But what was really happening? Her emotional closeness had activated his unconscious fear. It wasn't that he didn't love her, it was that her love touched parts of him that still believed love wasn't safe. That's why so many people say everything was fine until it got serious. Exactly. It's not that the avoidant changed, it's that the emotional stakes did. Their distance isn't a commentary on your value, it's a reflection of their internal conflict. The battle between wanting closeness and fearing it. So, if you've experienced this, please hear this clearly. It's not your fault. You didn't break them, you didn't scare them away. You simply showed up with enough love to awaken the fear they've been avoiding their whole life. And while that doesn't make the pain go away, it does help you stop blaming yourself for someone else's unfinished healing. That's where your freedom begins. Let's talk about what happens when love starts to feel real to someone with an avoidant attachment style, because this is the part that throws people off the most. Everything can feel like it's going well. There's connection, chemistry, even emotional depth. But then, just when things start to deepen, when emotional intimacy grows, the avoidant partner begins to shift. They become distant, more critical, less responsive, and it's easy to assume they've lost interest or stopped loving you. But often, the exact opposite is true. What's really happening is that love has triggered their defenses, and not just in a surface-level way. We're talking about deeply ingrained survival responses, reflexes from their nervous system that were formed long before they met you. When a relationship becomes emotionally intimate, their system registers it as a kind of emotional danger. Why? Because closeness means vulnerability, and vulnerability, based on their past, has often led to pain, rejection, or emotional chaos. So even when the relationship is healthy and grounded, their body says, "This is too close, back away." That's when deactivation behaviors kick in. These are the ways avoidants protect themselves when love starts to feel overwhelming. One of the first is creating distance. They may pull back physically or emotionally, less texting, less affection, less openness, not because they're punishing you, but because they're trying to re-regulate their emotional space. Distance is how they breathe. Next comes hyper-focusing on flaws. Suddenly they start noticing everything you do wrong. You chew too loud, you need too much, you're not as spontaneous as their last partner. This isn't about you being imperfect. It's their subconscious looking for reasons to justify their fear. Finding flaws becomes a way to push you away without having to confront their own discomfort. Then there's romanticizing past relationships. They might start bringing up an ex in glowing terms or thinking about how simple things used to be. Again, this isn't about the past being better, it's about the past feeling emotionally safer because it wasn't as close or intense. Avoidants often feel most comfortable in relationships that don't challenge them to be vulnerable. Another common move, saying they need freedom or space. You might hear things like, "I just need time to figure things out," or "I'm not ready for anything serious." What they're really saying is, "This feels too intimate and I don't yet know how to stay connected without losing myself." But because they've spent their whole lives prizing independence as a form of safety, they confuse closeness with confinement. And finally, there's emotional detachment masked as logic. This one is tricky. Avoidants are often highly rational, so when their defenses activate, they may present their distancing as calm reasoning. They'll say things like, "It just doesn't make sense right now," or "I've thought about it and this is the best decision for both of us." On the surface, it sounds mature, but underneath, it's emotional panic dressed up in logic. It's fear of intimacy wearing a mask of reason. None of these behaviors mean the avoidant person doesn't care. In fact, many avoidants experience a deep internal conflict. They feel love, but don't feel safe in love. And that's why it's so painful to be in a relationship with them. You feel the love in their eyes, their energy, their moments of presence. But you also feel the shutdown, the inconsistency, the sudden shifts. And unless they've done serious inner work, these patterns don't just go away with more love or reassurance. In fact, trying to fix or chase them often reinforces their need to run. I worked with a client named Jason who experienced this exact cycle. He was in a relationship with a woman who clearly cared about him, but as things got more serious, she started finding reasons to pull back. She questioned the relationship constantly, compared him to past partners, and eventually ended things by saying she just wasn't sure anymore. It crushed him, but over time, he began to see the pattern. Her leaving wasn't about a lack of love. It was about a lack of capacity to stay present in the face of love. So if you've experienced this, know this: their defenses aren't about your inadequacy, they're about their inner fear. You didn't cause it. You didn't fail. You just became emotionally significant enough to trigger a response they don't yet know how to manage. And the first step to healing, for both of you, is seeing that clearly. Not as blame, but as truth. Because clarity is what frees you from self-doubt and gives you the power to choose what kind of love you really want to grow in. The crux of the matter, and a significant explanation, lies here. Avoidants commonly misattribute love anxiety to a decrease in their feelings of love. That's the tragic irony. The more they care, the more overwhelmed they feel. And because they've never been taught how to hold love and fear at the same time, they interpret that discomfort as a signal to leave. It doesn't make sense to their partner, because from the outside everything seemed to be going well. But inside the avoidant, their nervous system is in full retreat. This is where many partners get blindsided. You think, we were doing so well, we were closer than ever. But for the avoidant, that closeness, while beautiful, was also terrifying. When love becomes deep and emotionally safe, it starts to awaken wounds they've worked hard to bury, wounds that say, if you need someone, you'll be hurt. If you get too close, you'll be abandoned. If you're fully seen, you'll be rejected. So rather than sit in that fear and work through it, they run from the relationship and label it as wrong, not the right time, or not the right person. But it's not about the person. It's about the emotional vulnerability the relationship requires. That's why many avoidants can spend years in casual, emotionally light relationships. Relationships that don't demand too much, that allow them to stay distant. These partnerships feel safe, not because they're fulfilling, but because they never challenge the avoidant's protective walls. Meanwhile, emotionally rich, nurturing relationships, where real intimacy exists, become overwhelming. They get close, then bolt, not out of apathy, but out of fear. I once worked with a client named Mel who was heartbroken after her avoidant partner ended their 2-year relationship. She'd been kind, patient, open, she supported his healing, and when he ended things, he didn't even cite a major issue. He just said, "I don't feel the same anymore." But months later, he reached out. He admitted he still loved her, but said he couldn't handle the closeness. He felt smothered, even though she'd done everything to respect his space. What really happened? He confused his fear for a loss of love. He didn't fall out of love, he fell into panic. And this is what so many people need to hear. Their leaving doesn't mean your connection wasn't real. It often means it was the realest thing they'd ever experienced and they weren't ready to hold it. When you understand this, you stop questioning your value. You stop seeing their withdrawal as rejection and instead recognize it as an emotional wound that has nothing to do with your worth. That doesn't mean you wait for them to come back. It means you heal forward with clarity, because here's the truth. Love that scares someone away isn't your failure. It's their invitation to grow. Or not. And your invitation is to keep choosing love that doesn't require you to shrink, guess, or chase. Love that stays even when it's hard. Love that heals, not hides. Here's where it all comes together, the final piece that can help you begin to truly release the blame you may be carrying. When an avoidant partner withdraws, it is not a reflection of your worth. That's hard to fully accept when you've been on the receiving end of their distance, their coldness, or their decision to walk away just when love started to feel safe. But their retreat was never proof that you were too much. If anything, it was proof that the connection was so real, it overwhelmed parts of them that were still wired to see love as unsafe. You see, avoidants don't leave because they didn't care. They leave because their system doesn't know how to handle emotional intimacy that feels consistent, steady, and reciprocal. It's not what they're used to. So even if they consciously crave closeness, subconsciously, they start to panic the moment they feel it settling in. They may not have the words to explain this, and often they're not even aware it's happening, but their nervous system is telling them, run before it gets too deep, protect yourself before you need them, detach before you get hurt. That's why so many avoidants end up cycling back to emotionally unavailable relationships, either with new partners or even past ones. It's not that they're more compatible with those people, it's that the emotional stakes in those relationships stay low. There's less vulnerability, less pressure, less risk. And for the avoidant, that often feels safer, even though it's far less fulfilling. I had a client, Evan, who went through this exact cycle. He dated someone securely attached. Someone who saw him, loved him, and created emotional safety. But when she leaned in, he pulled away. He ended things abruptly. Not long after, he started seeing an ex who never asked much from him emotionally. It looked like he moved on, but in reality, he had moved backwards, toward familiarity, not growth. It wasn't about love, it was about comfort, inside an old pattern that didn't challenge his defenses. And that's the truth many of us forget when we're in pain. People don't always choose what's best for them. They choose what feels most familiar. That doesn't make their choice a reflection of your value. It makes it a reflection of their emotional readiness. So if someone left after you gave them consistency, kindness, and emotional depth, let that be a mirror of their limits, not your lack. You were not too much. You were just more than they knew how to receive. And while they may return, or not, the deeper truth is your healing can't wait on their readiness. You deserve a love that feels safe for you too. Keep your heart open, but your standards high. Let their retreat remind you not of what you lost, but of what you're worthy of. Because the right person won't be scared off by your love. They'll be steady enough to meet it. Let's bring this full circle with the truth that can free you. Avoidants don't walk away because they stopped loving you. They often walk away because they don't know how to stay when love gets real. Their withdrawal is not a statement about your value, your beauty, or your worth. It's about their nervous system reacting to a level of closeness they were never taught to feel safe inside. In this video, we explored why avoidant individuals may leave just when things start to deepen, why love, rather than creating calm, can actually activate their defenses. We talked about how their childhood wounds taught them to fear vulnerability, how they interpret safety as suffocation, and how love can stir panic instead of peace. We unpack the behaviors that show up when this happens: emotional distancing, hyper-focusing on flaws, asking for space, or detaching under the disguise of logic. And we reframed the pain of their leaving, not as rejection, but as a trauma reflex rooted in fear, not truth. We also spoke to something important: the tragic irony that avoidants often stay in low-stakes relationships for years, but flee from emotionally rich, safe ones, not because they're incapable of love, but because love that asks them to be vulnerable also asks them to confront their greatest emotional fears. So here's your reminder: if you're hurting, you didn't lose them because you weren't enough. You lost them because you were real. And that's not your burden to carry. You didn't trigger their wounds by doing something wrong. You revealed their wounds simply by being emotionally present. That's not failure, that's clarity. Thank you so much for watching. If this gave you insight or validation, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, share your story, your turning point, or even just the line that hit home for you. Your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you want more grounded, emotionally intelligent support on navigating relationships, healing attachment wounds, and choosing love that doesn't cost your peace, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and stay connected, because you deserve a love that feels safe, steady, and mutual. A love that doesn't run when it gets real, but rises to meet you there.